There's a lot going on in the world of Magic the Gathering right now. We have ultra rare augmented reality playmats. Magic the Gathering is highly likely to be including a new write and roll mechanic. And if that wasn't enough, we're also looking at the possible return of FlavOracle.
Magic. I am a wizard! History. I'm an old wizard! The magic historian. My bones hurt.
Greetings! Owners of fine luxury cardboard rectangles, my friends, I hope the day finds you well. I, as always, am the Magic Lumberjack Storian, and I have arrived to share with you another installment of Mega Magic News! We have a number of items to discuss today, and what I want to start out with is the augmented reality playmat, because this is a pretty interesting concept overall, and I figured you guys would appreciate taking a look at it. So up on the screen, you're going to see the playmat itself. This is Kiki Mirror Breaker from the original Kamigawa block. So what's going on is this is a new playmat that they are issuing to kind of coincide with Kamigawa Neon Dynasty's release. And this is being done through pinfinity. So if you haven't seen previous videos of mine and you're not really familiar with what pinfinity is, the idea behind it is they make pins that are based on Magic the Gathering cards. So you can literally get little versions, they're half decently sized, of Magic cards that you can wear as pins. So pinfinity has a very limited amount of these special Kiki augmented reality playmats. If you're not really familiar with the concept of AR, the idea is supposed to be that you can digitally add on to reality, augment reality. So I've played games basically, like when I got my 3DS, they had these augmented reality games where when you looked through the 3DS on your table, it would actually form like a little game board that you could play on. So augmented reality really does have some interesting applications, but I do have to admit that the augmented reality that's used on this playmat isn't actually terribly exciting. Now, I don't own the footage of it, so I'm not going to display the footage here. I'm just showing you the playmat. But what happens when you look like through the augmented reality version is the colors become slightly richer. So I'll put a picture up of that so you can see what the slightly richer colors look like. And there will be a little planeswalker symbol up in the upper left-hand corner. And then other than that, really all that happens with Kiki is that he's moving in the slightest way. It's that sort of movement where if you're not fully paying attention to it, you might think your eyes are playing tricks on you. So think along the lines of arena styles. This really almost feels like an arena style built in to a Magic the Gathering playmat, right? So to me, this is a very interesting idea using augmented reality, but when it comes to Magic the Gathering, augmented reality would be far more interesting to me if you could place a Magic card down on the table, view it through your camera, and then it would actually build like a little 3D model of it on the screen for you to look at, or something like that, right? Something that adds an extra level to it. I have to admit, I don't really see the purpose of an augmented reality playmat when you can only see this slight graphical change when you have your phone in front of you staring at the playmat. Like, you're not going to play Magic holding a phone up to your face, staring at your phone while having your cards on the playmat. So in most cases, you're never going to use the augmented reality, which really does make it feel super gimmicky to me. But ultimately, there will be some people this appeal to, and it's not a like a super common item as well. They're not making too many of these. So it definitely is newsworthy, even if it is, to me, something that seems almost pointless in terms of what you can do with augmented reality. It's the least I have ever seen done with augmented reality. I'll put it that way, all right? So that is the playmat situation out of the way. Now, as I mentioned, Magic the Gathering, it feels like, is going to be highly likely to include a write and roll mechanic in the future, and also bring back dexterity mechanics. And the reason that I'm saying this is because there was actually a post basically over on Blogatog, which is Mark Rosewater's blog where he handles people's questions about Magic the Gathering. So a little while back, somebody asked him, they said, hey, would you rather add a dexterity mechanic to Magic or a roll and write mechanic to Magic? And Rosewater responded, both would be fun. On an unrelated note, Unfinity comes out April 1st. So, Rosewater can never directly come out and say, hey, we're including these new mechanics, right? He always has to keep tight-lipped about what's going on at Wizards of the Coast. However, this seems like a very tongue-in-cheek, like, hey, yeah, you know what? I actually really like the idea of both those mechanics. And completely unrelated to your question, there's a Magic product that's coming out in April, just so you know. So to me, this says that it is extremely likely that we're going to see both a dexterity and a roll and write mechanic, considering he said both were fun. Now, dexterity mechanics already exist in Magic the Gathering, and they've existed since the beginning of the game with Chaos Orb. Chaos Orb was a card that you had to hold a foot above the table and flip it so it rotated, and then whatever cards it fell on got destroyed. So it was a very interesting, crazy, but also impractical style of card, right? I literally have seen people tape their Magic cards to the walls. It's like, no, man, it's against good luck getting your Chaos Orb on that. It's literally taped to the wall. Like, the dexterity cards lead to crazy shenanigans. It makes perfect sense for them to be in an unset. Now, if you don't know what a write and roll mechanic is, it's actually really simple. Think of a game like Yahtzee. Yahtzee is a game where you roll a bunch of six-sided dice and you record the results down. So that's really the basics of the concept. You would roll dice and you would keep track of the information rolled on those dice. Now, it does leave me with some questions in terms of exactly how this would be executed, right? Because if it's just going to be some kind of bonus for a creature, why would you need the right part of it? If you're going to give a bonus to a creature, just roll a six-sider. Did you roll a 5? Great. 5+1/+1 counters on them. You can even use the dice, right? But in this kind of a scenario with a write and roll mechanic, it gives them more leeway to kind of get crazier with the idea, because we're only talking about really basic read and write style stuff here. So I want to see how that's going to turn out. I'm very curious about Unfinity. It looks like there's going to be like stickers and other things in the set too. So overall, it's a pretty wild bag. And Wizards is like traipsing that line where they're trying to change Unfinity from what it was, like a silver bordered set where everything is off in its own separate land, into some of these cards exist in only the Unworld, and some of these cards are legitimately like legal for regular play in tournaments and stuff like that. So it is theoretically possible that a write and roll or dexterity mechanic may actually make it out into like full-on official formats and not be limited to the unformat. However, I feel like that is incredibly unlikely. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is the possible return of FlavOracle. Now, this one doesn't feel as granted as the previous thing we just talked about with the mechanics there, because this again is something that comes through Rosewater, where he's basically questioning his followers. Is a return to FlavOracle something you guys would like to see? And I imagine there are a number of you who have no idea what I'm talking about when I say the term FlavOracle. Well, first of all, you need to know what Oracle is. So Oracle is the official database of official wordings for Magic the Gathering, basically. Like, if you want to know the exact wording up to date of a Magic card, you would go to Oracle. It will tell you everything. If the creature types have been updated, if the abilities have been changed, anything about the card that has functionally changed will always be listed in Oracle. But FlavOracle is where they take cards that don't have room for flavor text. So you have a card where there's just too much rules text, and there's literally no place on the card for you to place flavor text. But what they did in the past, and this is something you can see on Arena in some cases as well, is there will be flavor text attached to a card, but it's not actually on the card. So if FlavOracle returns, what would happen is anytime you go and look at cards on Oracle or anything like that, additional flavor text that wasn't available on the card would be included in the actual Oracle database. Now, as somebody who loves Magic lore and flavor, I'm hugely on board with the return of FlavOracle, but at the same time, I do have to recognize that I've played other games where people have put the lore and everything like that into like the company that made it put it into web databases or all these other things that you have to access, but they're not there directly in the game. And for me, I never went out of my way to get any of that additional information. I'm like, I really wish you would put all the lore into your game itself, because I don't want to just go to your website and read through your documentation to get me the story that way. It really doesn't come across the same way. So the FlavOracle, I get, it's a mixed bag. For people like me, it's going to be cool when you Oracle search something up and go, oh wait, dude, there's extra flavor text here. But at the same time, I feel like out of everything we're going to talk about today, that is the news that is going to be probably applicable to the least amount of Magic players. Now, we do have one more big news item to talk about in this video that I didn't even mention in the intro, and that is the changing state of Magic coverage. Basically, it has been confirmed that Star City Games has no real intention of getting full-on tournament coverage up and running anymore. The biggest indicator of that is the fact that Cedric Phillips, who was one of the big commentators over at Star City Games for their tournaments, is now essentially posting saying, hey, I'm a free agent, I'm moving on to a different stage of my life. It looks like Star City Games isn't going to be doing any sort of like tournament coverage like we did for the foreseeable future, so I'm kind of moving on to other projects and stuff. So to me, that is a very big indicator, right? We've already seen Wizards of the Coast do their signaling that they are done with high-level tournaments and high-level tournament coverage. It's very interesting because at one point Wizards of the Coast really wanted like Arena to be like a big thing where they were like, it's esports, everyone will know your name, but at the same time they wanted to like hide the stats of what everybody was playing in their decks and stuff like that. You know, like Karsten would be out there compiling everything that was going on, and Wizards of the Coast came along and was like, hey, stop compiling all the information about what people are playing in tournaments and stuff. And it's like, nobody does that in any kind of sport. You don't have baseballs where, nah, you can't know his RBI, bro. You can't know, like, they made some really weird choices in terms of how they wanted to push forwards the concept of Magic being a highly competitive, big deal esports. But the truth now is everybody knows Magic Arena is never going to be a giant esports sort of thing. And Magic the Gathering is never going to be a super highly competitive, massive professional environment. The days of those dreams are over. So the people who had those dreams, I feel you, man. It's sad for you. But the reality is, it's not going to happen. Wizards of the Coast discontinued the MPL, all of it. They're like, you know what? We're flattening everything out. We're not trying to create high-level events. They're just going to have events that are focused on everybody getting together, having a good time, playing Magic. There will be some competitive aspect, but the highest levels of Magic play are pretty much done for in that regard, right? And Star City Games coming along and going, I mean, first of all, obviously they had pulled it back because of what was going on with the world. But when you have somebody who's intrinsically tied into what they're doing, right? Cedric was one of the big faces of this whole endeavor, right? A lot of people associated him with this coverage. So when you see, hey, I'm departing off to greener pastures, you know, okay, Wizards of the Coast was done for. There was a bunch of people who were basically looking at Star City Games and going, yeah, you know what? Wizards of the Coast is giving up on all this stuff. We'll look to Star City to kind of try and carry the torch and whatever. And Star City is definitely doing it in terms of like running the tournaments and events and stuff. But it's the coverage that's going, because ultimately underneath it all, Magic tournament coverage was never truly compelling. It's really difficult to make compelling Magic coverage because, first of all, you need commentators who have a really good, deep knowledge of Magic, who can see everything that's going on at all the times, but then they also need the audience to have a pretty deep grasp of Magic the Gathering as well. You don't have a lot of time to sort out what's going on. It's not dynamic. The players aren't like really that energetic or whatever. Like Magic is a boring level spectator sport, right? We're talking like golf levels and stuff like that. Actually, I bet more people find golf way more interesting. But either way, it's one of those like more quiet, subdued sort of things. That's how I feel about like Magic competition. So ultimately, the way I'm viewing this is Star City saying we're done. They were like the canary in the coal mine at this point. I don't really see anybody else coming forwards and really like beefing up Magic tournament and Magic tournament coverage to take things back to the way they were. We are definitely in a newer, more casual era of Magic, and that will be the norm going forward. So it's pretty crazy for somebody who's been a part of Magic for as long as I have. I remember thinking about how crazy the Pro Tour and everything was when I was just a teenager. It's like, wow, people go and play Magic professionally and all this kind of stuff. And now here we are. The company that makes the game is like, no, you know what? Professional Magic ain't worth it. One of the biggest single sellers that has been around forever and was like competing with Magic in some ways for running big tournaments is also like, nah, you know what? Coverage ain't worth it. So I really see this as that's the end of this era, my friends. I mean, feel free to let me know your thoughts on that or any of the subjects in this news episode. But there are trees I must go and chop down. So thanks for coming by. Big shout out to all of my patrons, and I may be doing a surprise live stream over on my other channel today. So if you check down in the comment section, you might just find a link. See you later, my friends.